you guys ready to go for a quick Scotch, right? A quick Scotch game, or maybe not so quick, maybe actually quite slow and intense. That's the best way, I'd say. Don't get me wrong, I still love the King's Gambit, my favorite opening, but also the Scotch game gives the opportunity for very sharp line, very risky stuff, and beautiful. Absolutely love it. So we are going to look at Scotch game in the Schmidt-Mieses variations. So let's proceed with that one. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6. Fine, everybody is familiar. We're not going to look into Bishop E5, Bishop C4, the Italian or the Spanish. We're going to go with D4, strike in the center. Bang. Knight, pawn takes, and knight takes back on D4. And knight to F6, the Schmidt variation. Of course, there's nothing wrong with Bishop C5. That's the classical way to playing the Scotch game. We're not going to look into the Steinitz with the Queen to H4. Again, maybe not the best stuff for black, but you've got to do the homework if you're playing with the whites against this. We're going to look into the Knight F6. Okay, so Andreas Esipenko with blacks and Gawain Jones with white. If I haven't said that before, just stay with us. It's great game. You're not gonna regret it. So knight f6 now attacks d4. Yeah, you could play knight c3, but if you go, where's the red paint? If you go knight c3, they might be going just bishop to b4, pitting your knight. Yeah, again, you could take then on c6 and stuff, but that's not what I want to play. What I want to play here is just going with knight takes on c6 straight away. Well, they could take with the d, but it's not that great because then queen's gonna take, queen, king's gonna take, and white is simply better. White simply better with great initiative. But no, we're considering b takes c6, which is the best stuff for play here with the black pieces, and e5, the Mises variation. Bang, the e5. You're not playing knight c3, although you could, but e5 is the attacking one. So, guys, rest assured, Magnus played it. Vasily Vanchuk, very many guys, Alexander Grishchuk, and very many very strong grandmasters go for those lines. Fabi Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura. So, do I have to continue? So e5 now attacks the knight on f6. Yeah, you could go d5. There is also c, then there's knight b6 and knight c3. It's great. You could do that too with black if you want. But also, there is the queen e7. Queen e7, pinning the white pawn to the king. You can't take the black knight because the white king would be in check. So what do you play? Well, the line that Gawain Jones went for here is queen to e2. Now I'm ready to take the black knight because the pawn is no longer pinned, right? So knight to d5 now, of course, moves to safety. H4. Yeah, you could have still hit with the c4 pawn, not a problem. You could go for that one as well, my dear friend. But h4 is also an idea, which wants to say if you want to castle short, I might be just keep pushing that guy. But there is another thing here. Another little subtlety is probably bishop to g5. So h4 would support the bishop to hit the queen. So that's another little idea we want to keep in mind. So, f6 right. What move is that, fellas? Move number 8. f6 being played by black here. So, boy, if that ain't sharp, I don't know what is. I mean, just look at that. So I have to tell you that no one is going to castle today. That's more reasons for you to watching this for a bit longer. So c4 now hits the knight on d5. Bishop to e6. Beautiful. Can you take the knight? Well, no, you cannot, unless you want to lose the queen, which you do not want, of course. So now bishop aligns diagonally with the queen. That's great stuff. That's really great stuff. You can't take the knight. Not today, not in this idea. And also, when the h4 was played, not just that to support a potential bishop g5, but also, if I haven't said it, it allows the rook lift, rook to h3. So now the rook is free to go on the third rank, wherever it's more compelling, whatever is more important for the rook to be. Knight to b6 now, double attack on the c4 white pawn. Knight to d2, defending and also developing off the back rank. Takes the pawn on e5 and a rook to e3. h3 over to e3. We've got double power, double attack on the e5. What to do, what to do? Well, just go with the d6 now. Very nicely. Defending, look at this. Great. You guys want to go for this quick Scotch? Definitely you should play the Scotch game. You won't say you getting bored. There's no bored. I mean, just look at that. Just look at this, man. Yeah, the h4 is a little bit hanging, but there are other things. And white plays g3. Again, every single move has more than one purpose. Now, g3 defends the h4 against the queen, but there's more than that. It also allows potentially the bishop to come perhaps h3 because it vacates that square. It allows them to move. Maybe g2, maybe h3. So that's just absolutely great because this g3 means very many other things. Now, queen goes over to d7. Again, with more than just an objective. First thing first, it doesn't allow, if you want to put it this way, it doesn't allow bishop h3, okay, because then simply the queen takes the bishop. And another thing, it vacates the e7 for the bishop. Maybe the bishop wants to play. Maybe they want to cancel short. You never know. So, as you can see, every single stuff means many other things. And now, rook from e3 over to a3, attacking the bishop. Unbelievable. Bishop goes now to safety. Bishop to c8. c5, attacking the black knight. And knight to d5. So you'll get your guys in the center. Keep them there. Now that knight is on a beautiful outpost. There is no pawn to frustrate the black knight. So we can call this in chess as an outpost. It can't be harassed by the pawns. Great stuff. And white now continues with the knight, allowing the bishop on its diagonal to moving whatever they feel like to. So knight to e4 centrally, hitting those squares and vacating for the bishop. Beautiful. Bishop to e7, exactly as we said. Perhaps ready to castle, perhaps not. We don't know that just yet. Queen to h5 now, checking the king and sort of, prompting black to respond with g6, which they did. And that means a further weakening of the dark square surrounding the black king. Queen has to go to safety. And in the end, black had decided to castle short. Now, when they castle short, bishop to h6 now hits the rook on f8. So you can't lose that guy. You have to move it to safety. F. Queen to a4 now. Switches the sides. He went on h5. Now he went over to a4. Right? So pressure perhaps on the c6. So black has to stay close to defending c6. Queen went now to e8. And then again, it's one of those moves. If you look at a position here, what is black going to do with the bishop on c8? What are you going to do? Given the fact that you cannot play a6 anymore and b7 is completely painful since you just don't do nothing, again, a move like queen to e8 enables the bishop to go maybe on d7, maybe on e6, maybe on f5. So this squares are way better, more efficient, more activity for the light square black bishop. So rook to c now. Just in principle, if this were to be a trade at any point, the rook would be thriving on a c column here. Bishop d7 and rook to b8. Rook to b3 because the idea perhaps we have a chance to play rook b7, attacking both a7 and c7 weak squares and backward black pawns. So hunting the weaknesses, trying to go for every single time your opponent creates a weakness, you try to go for it. And a move like rook b3 just does that. Bishop to f8. But I want to, just for a second, to retain your attention, guys, with the move that is very difficult to see. A very difficult move to see. Now, very easy for any software, a powerful engine to finding the next move. But boy, for a human, this is quite difficult to find it. And the brilliant move that black could play is knight b6 here. And now you say, wait a minute, what knight b6? Why? Well, it attacks the queen, right? Now, you don't have to take the knight, but if you were to take the knight, yeah, well, black takes back with the a7. Now the rook attacks. You have to move this queen very, very carefully, given the fact there is a very dangerous bishop pair looking this way towards your, whoopsie, towards your queen and towards your rook. You have to be very careful. When you play something like, let's say, queen to b4, they will be continuing with d5, and d5, for instance, attacks the queen but also attacks the knight. So you move the queen to safety, and at the same time the knight will be captured back, and the engine says that actually in this sequence black is even better than white with the minus 0.6. So, you know, just keep in mind these little tactics and subtleties are probably for a human not very easy to find them. But it's worth noting the knight on b6 that could have been played here for by black, by Esipenko. He didn't, but instead he played bishop f8, which is very explainable. You do want to get rid of the bishop on h6. You can't have that guy here just taking all the dark squares. You really need to challenge, right? I mean, it's understandable from a human point of view, you see. Bishop takes and queen takes. Right, let's continue. Still pretty much equal. I think I've left the eval gauge, right, for you guys to have a constant image. So still very much balanced. This crazy Scotch game. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And queen to a3. Well, very simply being put here, attacks d6, a backward weak black pawn, twice. Okay, so it's important. But also another little detail it's important here to notice. That if this knight were to move, I don't know for what purpose, but just saying, if this knight were to move from e4, also black has a very deadly battery here, very annoying, on the f file. So white has to put this thing very well in balance. You move the knight somewhere, f2 is hanging, takeable by the rook, supported by the black queen. So this is just simply so not easy, so not over. Now, rook to d8 had been played, moving the rook from the corner. Maybe in the future he was planning to push into d6 after the black knight goes God knows where. He wants to roll down those guys, and you know, you want to put the rook behind the pass pawn, perhaps, amongst many other things. Rook to b7 now, being played. And rook to f3, attacking first the queen with tempo. Always when you attack the queen with the less valuable piece, you're winning a little bit of a tempo. Queen takes now on d6, so grab the pawn. Rook takes on f2, and now if you say, oh yeah, let's go, take the rook immediately. Well, oh, we can't do this because there is queen is completely hanging, so we can't take the rook. So bishop to c4, what does that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. And of course, and I'm mentioning that after rook takes here, together with the queen, and the rook attacks the f1. So that's also another little detail. And there's so many subtleties, right? And now bishop to c4, which pins the knight to the king. It's brilliant. And also, it defends f1. So no longer rook f1 is applicable here, because we've got two defenders against two attackers. It's simply not working. So queen takes, and knight takes down. Nice and cool. Knight is still in a pin. Can't move. Rook f6 attacks the knight. This guy probably gives a lot of headaches here for Esipenko. This guy here on d6, what are you doing? And now knight goes very nicely on e4, hitting the rook. Rook goes f7. And now knight to g5 is just great. Knight to g5, another brilliant attacking move. Rook has to go again. Rook to e7. And rook to d1 being played. Now more pressure. So rook from c over to the d file. More pressure on the pinned knight here, the pin piece. The bishop pins it to the king. And let's just pause it again just for a couple of seconds, because I want to underline another thing. Because the knight is being pinned to the king, absolutely. It's an absolute pin. Also notice the bishop is pinned. The bishop can't move, so to speak, because if the bishop were to play, just say deliberately, just a random move, because I want to highlight how you could just simply take the rook, the knight being pinned by the bishop. This is just great stuff. It's great. The mobility of the pieces, the interconnections, the endless intricacies here is just amazing. This guy is pinned, therefore the rook is unsafe, and the bishop is pinned too. Fabulous. Now, black here, Esipenko, at this stage, should have considered playing rook d to e8, reinforcing the rook, thus freeing up the bishop to play whatever he wants to play. A bishop g4, bishop c8, I don't know exactly, but that definitely frees up the bishop. A move like rook d to e8. A move like h6, which is not the best, but still kicks the knight away. That guy gives a lot of headaches since it takes a lot of important vital squares, the light squares. Now he played the blunder. Rook f8. Rook f8 at the blunder. And now white very relaxingly takes the pawn on a7 again. Bishop is pinned. Knight is pinned absolutely. Oh man, h6. A little bit, a tad too late. h6, it kicks the knight away. You can't go f3 because the rook will take you, so you gotta go e4. Knight to e4. King goes in a corner. Already white is doing better after that little blunder with the rook to f8. Now bishop removes the knight, pawn takes, and rook takes now. We could say at this stage, clearly white is winning because he's got a billion extra pawns. When I say billions extra pawns, I'm talking about 2 pawns. This guy's on A and B, which from a psychological point of view of a human, of the receiving end here, if you're with the blacks, you got an issue here because those guys are pretty much impossible to be stopped. So we could say, yeah, doesn't look very optimistic for black. Let's put it this way. So some last attempts here with the rook f1, but even if you take here, you're still very much winning with whites because, yeah, okay, bishop h3 checks, discovered, black's gonna take, but then you're gonna shut it off with a3 and you got no issue. On the contrary, you got 2 passed pawns. So now Gawain plays king d2, probably he was just playing or something. Anyway, you can't check now because there is a knight. But Esipenko comes with rook to d1. Pretty much the same thing with the rook f1 previously. He planned that if king takes, there is a check here. But still, it's not that strong of a tactic, given the fact, exactly as we said, guys, after a3, white definitely enjoys pass pawns on a and b. These guys can't be stopped. And this pawn here on e5 is hanging. And those guys are on dark squares. Another very important little detail here. Those guys are on dark squares, so can't be touched by the bishop. So we could say the knight is definitely happier than the bishop, the light square bishop. And this troublesome knight can always do all sorts of forks everywhere. So just resign here because at the Super Grandmasters level, this is too painful to play. White had won, and what a game, what a Scotch game, Schmidt-Mieses variation. Yeah, Schmidt is with the knight f6, so just briefly, if I didn't say it, I mean, I said many things, but let me just say, I said about the Steinitz, about the classical, yeah, there is also bishop to b4, but then c3, I don't think blacks really enjoyed that one. So knight f6, this is the Schmidt variation in the Scotch game. This is the Schmidt. Yeah, you could play knight c3, but then again, be prepared against the bishop e4. Or just play like Gawain Jones, like Magnus Carlsen, like Fabi Caruana. Boom, take on c6. Go for this one. Go for a quick or a slow Scotch game. Yeah, King's Gambit. King's Gambit. Thanks for watching it, guys. And hopefully I'm going to see you on the next video.